that I had with this particular boss was that he thought niceness meant weakness, which is not necessarily the case. Being nice and being kind can be one and the same, but it could also mean that being nice means being weak, but you don't have to let it be that way. Being nice, but also holding boundaries and holding people accountable. That's the kind part of that same coin, I think. And so ultimately, if you can do both, then you wind up getting your people to both respect you and like you. Welcome to the Nice Business Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Train, business, leadership, and culture consultant, and Vistage CEO, Peer Advisory Group Chair. And I'm joined by my friend, Jim Bob Howard, veteran technical consultant. Together, we have more than 60 combined years of business and organizational experience. The purpose of this podcast is to have short but meaningful discussions about the people and culture side of business and how owners and executives can be both kind and successful. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Nice Business Podcast. And we are very honored, Jim Bob and I are very honored to have the real Jason Duncan, founder of the Exeter Club, with us. And we're going to talk a lot about work-life balance for executives and how is it that they can just be so busy, and really what drives leaders to not be able to carve out really a good work-life balance. So Jason, let's just dive right into it. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am, as you said, thank you, first of all, for letting me be here. But as you said, I'm the founder of the Exeter Club. The Exeter Club is a mastermind for high-level entrepreneurs who are tired of being slaves to their businesses. And we work through something called the XOS methodology that we put together called this Exeter Operating System. It's a 7-stage process to get people from stuck in the weeds of their business all the way to a successful financial exit of the company. So that's what we do. We have 6 coaches on our team that work with our clients to do that. We have clients in every industry all across the United States. Now, my history goes back. I started my career in pastoral ministry, then transitioned into teaching school, and then became an entrepreneur. And that has led me to kind of combine all those things that I have been trained to do in the past to now in my life as a coach and a podcaster and a speaker and an author. I kind of pull all those things together and get to help other people. So I'm living in the center of what I consider to be my joy and my passion and my purpose. And I love every minute of it.
Well, we definitely are the sum of our parts. And it sounds to me like you are very much a people-focused, people-centered kind of guy, which is exactly what we do here on this podcast. And I appreciate your time and joining us. Jim Bob, you go way back with Jason. And so I'll let you chime in here too.
Yeah, we've known each other for a number of years. We were talking before the recording that we haven't really talked for about a year plus COVID, which makes it 6, right? And so, but Jason and I were part of a networking group in the Nashville area, and I saw the company that he was building. I've seen, as you've been building things on LinkedIn, I've been seeing all of the things that are going on with the Exeter Club. So it's great to chat again. I definitely want to ask a little bit more about exiting, what that looks like. Is that, are you talking about, and maybe this is one of the aspects, are you talking about like, I want to get to the point where I can leave the business completely and sell it? Or is it also, I want to get out of the business so I can, I still have it, I just don't want to be in it as much? Is it a combination of those, or what's really kind of how you define that?
When people think about the word exit in the context of business ownership, they generally think about one of 2 options, which is, one is I sold my company and I'm filthy rich, financially independent, and never have to work again. That's the exit that we all aspire for. But that very rarely happens. Maybe less than 2% of people ever experience that.
True.
The second type they consider is what we refer to in the business as an earn-out, where somebody comes and buys the business, but they say, look, for example, I'll give you $10 million, but I'm going to give you 3 today at closing. The other 7 you will earn out if you stay and run the company as CEO for the next 3 to 5 years, and we hit all these benchmarks, then you'll get the full $10 million. Well, earnouts generally suck for the person that sold the business, and I've got clients to prove it. I think we'd write books about how terrible earnouts typically can be. But those are the 2 ways that people think. Well, I inadvertently discovered the third option, which I now refer to as exit without exiting. I actually wrote a book about this called Exit Without Exiting. Published it. It came out in March of 2023 based on the experience that I had in my business. So in 2018, we hit what I considered to be like the gold standard for profitability in a small company. We hit $1 million in EBITDA. And so I told my business coach, I said, hey man, I want to sell the company. We're very profitable. Let's sell this thing. I don't really enjoy running the company. I hate being stuck to the day-to-days. I was a lighting and electrical contracting company. I didn't really care for that type of business. I said, let's sell it. And he looked at me, he said, you can't sell. It's not sellable. And I thought he was nuts. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the reason you can't sell it is because nobody wants the business, because what you want is out of it. And that's what they don't want. They don't want to be in it either. They want to buy it as an investment. The same reason you want out is the same reason nobody's wanting in. And that rocked me. It shook me. I was like, well, what am I going to do? So in 2019, let me fast forward just the next year, I was obviously considering what my business coaches said. We didn't take it to market because it wouldn't have been profitable to do so. I was dealing with a business partner issue during that whole year of 2019, one that nearly tanked me financially, not just the business. And something happened at the end of that year that had never happened before. At the end of 2019, we lost money as a company. And that's the first time we'd ever lost money as a company. So we went from $1 million to the positive to now losing money. And there was only one reason why. It was because of me. I'd spent maybe 25% of my energy and effort paying attention to the business in 19, where in 2018 and beyond, before that, I'd been 100% involved. And that proved my business coach's point. He said, this is what happens when the business is too dependent on the owner. And that changed everything for me. That was when I said, okay, I got to figure a different way. And so for the next 18 months or so, I figured a way to exit without exiting and maintain ownership and financial control of the business and income from the business. And I wrote a book about that experience.
Nice.
Fantastic. And I will tell you that I've been seeing a lot of this, especially lately. As you both know, I have not so many months ago retired from a long-time position, and I started my own consultancy, and I'm also building a Vistage CEO peer advisory group. And I'm talking to CEOs and business leaders and business owners all the time. And you see the same stories over and over again. I can't pick my head up out of the weeds. I'm so busy. I don't have any time for this, that, or the other. I don't have time for a coach. I don't have time for joining a peer group, but I really want to. But it's more than just doing things to help yourself in your business. What else is being left to the side? Are you not going to your kids' soccer games? Are you not able to spend time? I mean, both of you are religious men. Are you not able to really spend time with your church or your community organization or things like that? There are any number of different personal things that you would love to be able to. I mean, playing golf. Maybe you just want to get out there and play around at golf and you just can't because your head is always in the business. You're working in the business. You're not working on it. And it is really a shame to see, because that is the first sign of trajectory towards executive burnout. Thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, I believe that, I think it was Michael Gerber who coined this phrase of work on the business, not in the business. And he wrote about that in the E-Myth. And it's a fantastic book. I think everybody should read that book.
Yep. I
built on that and expanded that concept over the years now that after writing Exit Without Exiting, and I've seen other clients go through this process. I think there's a third level. There's in the business, which is what owner operators do. I believe that's where 90+% of entrepreneurs stay. They stay in the business as an owner operator. If you think about it as let's think an ice cream shop. If I own an ice cream shop and I'm owner operator, I'm ordering the ice cream or making the ice cream. I'm scooping the ice cream. I'm checking the customers out. I'm opening the store, closing the store, doing the books. That's an owner operator. And most entrepreneurs stay in the business most of their career. What Michael Gerber talks about is moving into working on the business. Well, I consider that tier 2 entrepreneurship. That's an owner manager. an owner operator, then you got an owner manager. And I'd say 5 to maybe 8% of entrepreneurs ever really truly become owner managers. So in the ice cream shop analogy, they're not necessarily scooping the ice cream or ordering it, but they are in charge of all of those things. And if they're not there to make sure it gets done, it probably won't happen. So they're still,
Right.
and they may have 3 or 4 shops, but they're still required to be there. So they're not in it, they're on it. But I believe there's a third tier, and this is what we teach in the Exeter Club. The third tier of entrepreneurship is owner investor. This is when you're not working in or on, you're working above. You're now looking at the fact that this is an investment for me. And so now I own a chain of ice cream shops that I have a team that manages and systems. And I look at a financial dashboard on a monthly basis, and I meet with my leaders on a quarterly basis, and I make sure that it's working and I'm making money from my investment. That's the difference between in, on, and above, the 3 tiers of the entrepreneurial evolution.
I think you said the key word there is systems.
Yeah.
Having systems in place, developing the systems to make sure that they run the way you want them to run, and that you can then backfill them with the people that you can trust to run them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically a plug and play.
So my question on that, though, Jason, is from, say you own a business, you've started a business, you've built it, up to a certain point. When can you start making those transitions? When do you go from owner operator to owner manager to owner investor? When are there signs? Are there, specific times that, within, like, I need it to be within 5 years or within 10 years? How do I know that it's really time for me to move on to that next thing, and that or even just have a plan to know how I move on to the next thing?
That's a great question, and it's one worth considering. I would say that there is no hard and fast rules on any of this. Listen, if you want to open an ice cream shop and that's what you want to do for the rest of your life, and you don't mind scooping ice cream and that's all you want, that's great. Owner operators, there's nothing wrong with being an owner operator inherently. But I think most of us, if we're honest, when we started our companies, we didn't start a company just to have a better job. We started our companies to do something, like provide us freedom, the ability to choose what we do with our day and what we do with our time, and make more money. Those are the reasons that most people start businesses. So is there a specific time frame when you move out of tier 1 into tier 2? No, I don't think there is. I think it's just, what do you want? And I think this is where people, Richard, you were talking about the fact that you hear so many people say, I'm too busy, I'm too busy. Well, they're just not being honest, because if they want freedom, you're too busy for freedom. Like, that doesn't make any stinking sense. Like,
Exactly.
that's stupid. That is absolutely asinine. And people are just not being honest with themselves. So if someone says, I'm busy, but I like it, leave me alone. Okay, I'm not going to argue with them. I'm not going to. A person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. I'm not going to try to convince you to come over to my side of thinking. But as Jim Bob asked, when do you move from one to the next? It's a mindset. So if you are in that owner operator stage, which you probably are, anybody listening to this, what is your mindset? What do you want to be? Do you want to be owner manager? Okay, well, then you need to start working on it. You got to figure out basic delegation. You got to assemble a support squad of people around you. And then you have to start building what we call your A team. Those are the first 3 stages of the XOS method. Those things have to start happening. And as you do that, you will start noticing the ascendancy from being stuck in the grind to being, oh, now I'm overseeing the grind. I'm still in it, but I'm just not as deep in it as I was. And you start moving. I was talking to a guy just yesterday. He runs a company doing about 15 million a year with a 20% EBITDA. So just do the math. That's a pretty hefty bottom line. Doing really well, but he's working 50 plus hours a week. His business partner is working 70 plus hours a week. And he's like, there's got to be something different here. He goes, I have all the toys. I have all the houses. I have all the cars. Like, I've got what I want. He said, but I don't have the time to do anything with it. Like,
Yeah.
That's why we exist.
Right. Ultimately, it comes down to, absolutely right, what do you want? And that's really, whether somebody is a client of yours or whether somebody is another coach, ultimately, one of the first things that they should be asking a client or a prospective client is, what do you want? What is it that you're looking for? Because what you say and what you're actually doing may be different, so that then the job is to figure out how to get you from there to there. Yep. And find that it's too common for people to be so down in the weeds that they really can't see that. What do you think is the first step that they should be taking?
If we just go practically through the methodology that we built, it's basic delegation. You've got to make sure you embrace delegation through that process. But I think the overall issue behind all of this is mindset.
Mindset.
There's something that I write about in my book and I talk about frequently that I refer to as the hero syndrome. And the hero syndrome affects most entrepreneurs. And what that means is they put on the cape, they swoop in, they save the day because they're the best at it. They have superpowers that nobody else has. About they can see things and do things in that business that nobody else can do. And that's true because that obviously that's what entrepreneurs are. You see things and do things other people don't do. You take risks other people aren't willing to take. And that's fine within the first months and maybe even the first year or so of owning a business. But the hero syndrome ends up becoming a permanent condition and they keep the cape on. And I can tell you this, Elon Musk does not have hero syndrome. Jeff Bezos does not have hero syndrome. Like you go, Steve Jobs did not have the hero syndrome. Any of these guys that are running billion and trillion dollar companies, they gave up the cape a long time ago. So really the first step in all of this to get out of the weeds is you've got to get rid of the hero syndrome. And that's a mindset. You've got to understand that, yes, I can do it better than everybody else, but that is not sustainable. Like I've got sitting across from me that you off camera as a brand new employee of mine, marketing strategist I just hired. Right now, I am the marketing department from that company. It's a small company. I'm doing it all. And right now I know it better than anybody else, but I also understand that I can't be stuck in that. Like I got to drink, I got to eat my own dog food, right? I'm teaching this stuff. I got to do it too. So I hired somebody who right now is green and doesn't understand all the intricacies, but has the education and the experience to take me to the next level.
Right.
Now, if I had the hero syndrome, I wouldn't have hired this person. I wouldn't have hired her. I would have said, you know what, I can do this. I'll figure it out. But the hero syndrome is not part of my. I overcame that a long time ago. Now I'm in the process of building the team around me to do the things that need to be done. Even though at first they might not do it as good as me, ultimately they will do it much better than I am.
Sure.
Do you have merch? Because there's a few people I'd like to send for Christmas a mug that says "Give up the cape."
That's true. That is
So I
true. We
sent
have T-shirts.
anonymously to a couple of people, but yeah, give up the cape.
We have T-shirts that say "Own it, don't run it."
Right.
I think that's a whole new business model, Jim Bob. You just stumbled upon. Give up the cape. I love that. Well, actually, Jim Bob, you were talking about this in a prior episode about you hire people for their expertise. You hire them to be the experts that they are. You go ahead and restate that because you said it so beautifully before.
And that's the general thing, right? Is when you go through the hiring process and you put all this money into recruiting and onboarding and all of that, and then you don't trust that person to do what you hired them to do. Why did you even hire them, right? And so you're hiring people for their genius. So the idea is, and the mind shift is that let them be geniuses in where they are. Now, what that means sometimes is like, what is their zone of genius? How do you help them stay in that as much as possible by taking things off of their plate or getting obstacles out of their way or building bridges to things that they need so that they don't have to worry about building the bridge. They don't have to worry about removing the roadblocks. They don't have to worry about getting the resources that they need. They get to focus on the thing that they're good at, which is what you hired them to do, which means that you can then delegate things to them so they go off and do good things. I want to hire people that make good decisions, but I don't want them to have to make the same good decision every day. Like once you've made a good decision, can we codify that? Can we make that a part of our process? So that whatever we came up with and we say, here's how we're going to do this, let's put the system in place to do that. So you can go off and make more new good decisions about other things. And we actually get to scale up because we do that.
Yeah. Fantastic point. And the other thing is, I mean, yes, you were hiring somebody to be the geniuses that you want them to be, but they're not going to start off always making fantastic decisions.
No, that's true.
They need to be able to fail a time or two until you get them to where you want them to be, right? So, Jason, how do you help that owner, operator, or owner manager get to the place where they're willing to trust their people?
There's a universal law called the law of discovery. Everybody will understand what this means is that we learn more by what we discover on our own than what we are told or taught.
Yes.
And the best illustration for that is for those of us who have children, we remember training our young child what hot means, what hot means. And they would want to touch a stove or a candle or a heater or something that was hot or flames in a fire. And you would say, no, hot. And they would look at you, hot. And then you say, no, hot. And they would go, no, hot. Well, we all know they don't know what that means until what? Until they touch it. That is when they truly understand what hot means. So your employees, if you expect them, you give them instructions, say, here's what I need you to do. Here's the outcome I want. And they look at you, go, yes, this is the outcome you want. And you go, this is the outcome I want. And yes, this is the outcome I want. And guess what? Until they fail at it, they don't truly understand why the outcome is important or how it's achieved. So you got to get comfortable with it. Now, if they continue to fail, they need to be fired. That's just that they're incompetent in that particular role that you've hired them for. They can't stay. But you've got to understand the law of discovery. And if you don't believe in the law of discovery, that means you think you're smarter than every other human on earth. And that is obviously not true.
Mm-hmm. Right. What would you say is probably the hardest thing for an owner to overcome or learn in order to get to that place where they can pull themselves out of the weeds?
I think what you said earlier is trust. I think that they really have a hard time trusting other people. And I think that's the hardest thing for most people to overcome. But trust can be built through proper guardrails and systems. So if you put the right systems in place and dashboards and KPIs, and there's all, these cliches, but they're all true. Like if you put these in place, you can trust but verify. You can make sure you trust them to do it, but then you're going to verify that it gets done. I was speaking at an event last night in Nashville, and I was talking about what it means to lead. And one of the things it means to lead is empower others. Mm-hmm. And there's a story I shared about Dwight Eisenhower when he was preparing for D-Day. He knew he couldn't be on the ground when all these people were obviously landing on the beach. He couldn't be there to oversee it. And he said something, actually, I've got the quote here. I'm going to read it because I don't want to screw this up. It was in my notes from last night. He said, "You're going to make decisions on the ground that I cannot make for you. I trust your judgment. I trust your judgment." And so that wasn't a decision about whether they're running the right marketing campaign or they're going to do the new newsletter right for your business. This was lives. These were tens of thousands of lives. And he had to empower him to trust him. But then he said, and this is the quote that makes it more powerful. He says, "If any blame or fault attaches to this attempt, it is mine alone." So not only did he trust them to do it, but he understood that ultimately the buck stopped with him. And then if this D-Day failed, I will accept that responsibility.
Sign of an amazing leader. Yes. And, and we're going back all the way back to World War II. And here we are in the 21st century, still rings true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Human nature is human nature. And good leadership is good leadership, regardless of what area you're in. But views on leadership can be wildly different. I mean, Jim Bob knows this. I've told this story before. I used to run a company for a couple of guys who, one of them was a raging narcissist, and, who shall remain nameless in the company too. But he actually told me once that he thought that I was too nice to the team. And which kind of gets to something that you and I were talking about, Jason, in our prior discussion. And he said, if they don't fear you a little bit, then at least a little bit, then they don't respect you. Dwight Eisenhower proved that to be completely different. And ultimately, I think that the whole reason for this podcast is the Nice Business Podcast. And Jason, you asked me in our prior discussion, are we talking about being nice or being kind? So I would like to hear your thoughts on that, because really we're talking about both, aren't we? Being nice and kind, and how does that relate to leadership?
Yeah. I don't know where this concept first appeared. It was somewhere on social media, and it was some woman or girl talking about the difference between nice and kind. And I will not do it justice to try to repeat how she explained it, but she was talking about the difference between people who live in Philadelphia versus people who live in Memphis or something. It was two cities that we would all understand, because people in this city are nice, but the people in this city are kind. Maybe it was Philly and New York. I don't know what she was saying, but it was the first time I'd ever heard somebody try to draw a distinction between those two words because I always assumed that they meant the same thing. So when you invited me to be on the Nice Business Podcast and we got to talking about that word nice, I said, the idea really is not to be nice, it's to be kind. And I know that there's a play on words here. Hey, nice business. And then we also want to be nice. But nice, if you look at it, nice is just usually about avoiding discomfort. That's usually
Right.
what nice is. And kind is about doing what actually helps. So nice is keeping the peace, where kind is telling the truth even when it hurts. Nice is wanting to be liked, and
Yep.
then kind is wanting another person to grow.
Yeah.
So you can look at, if you catch a bear or a small animal in a trap, a claw trap, and they're obviously still alive, but they're hurt and you want to help them. Well, the nice thing to do would just be go up and pet them and give them some water and just make them comfortable. That's nice. But the kind thing to do would be to, hold them down, pin them where they don't bite you or hurt themselves or hurt you anymore, which is not comfortable. And then pry those jaws open, the clamp, and then let their bloody leg or stump get out of there and they can be free. That's kind, but it's not very nice.
Yeah.
And I think that for entrepreneurs and leaders, especially, that a lot of us struggle that. I am the first person to admit that I am way more nice than I am kind. And I am, as I grow older, I'm trying to flip that. Not that I don't want to be nice, right? I think being nice is an appropriate thing, but to the neglect of being kind, I'm a nice guy. I'm nice to my employees, but sometimes I probably should be more kind in that, hey, that was a really dumb decision. Why did you do that? Where I probably wouldn't say that because that's not nice to say. So I need
Right.
to be better at being kind, but not giving up being nice.
We all want to be nice. We all want to be liked. But at the same time, being nice does not necessarily have to mean only. I think the misperception that I had with this particular former boss was that he thought niceness meant weakness, which is not necessarily the case. Being nice and being kind can be one and the same,
Right.
but it could also mean that being nice means being weak, but you don't have to let it be that way. Being nice, but also holding boundaries and holding people accountable. That's the kind part of that same coin, I think. And so ultimately, if you can do both, then you wind up getting your people to both respect you and like you.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy thing to do.
Well, and I think that all of this makes me think of, I guess, a quote or at least a policy at Netflix that Reed Hastings put in his book, No Rules, which is adequate employees receive a generous severance package. Right. And that's being kind to them. It's being kind to the team that's having to pull their weight. It's being kind all the way around. It may not feel very nice when you get a severance package when you weren't expecting to be leaving the company, but it is kind because it realizes that what you're doing here is not up to the level that our organization is firing on. And we've got people that are driving excellence and you're being adequate. It doesn't mean that there's not some opportunity to say, hey, that was a dumb decision. Why'd you do that? But also give them the opportunity to say, hey, look, you have the ability to take these risks. And the outcome is really going to be important. It's not that you can't fail, but fail too many times and you're going to be getting a generous severance package and you'll be on your way out. But that's the difference, right? You'd think of, being let go from a company because you weren't performing might seem like that's not very nice. Why didn't they give me, an improvement plan or something along those lines? And, most improvement plans are just, delaying the inevitable of letting you go, right? If you don't know how to improve or you don't know what you need to do to improve and you're just given a little extra time, well, it's a great opportunity for you to go look for another job, for one thing. But which isn't nice to the people that you're being more of a dead weight to. And that's not very kind to you either, right? So that's what I, just kind of hearing, Jason, you say the difference between nice and kind, it really kind of drives home that it would be easy to be nice on the surface to people like, hey, I want to be liked. I want you to feel good about yourself. But sometimes feeling good about yourself is not really what you need. You need to know that you need to up your performance. You need to take some more training. You need to get a coach that's going to help you make some of these decisions and move forward. Right.
Yeah. Imagine this, like, so you're you come up on somebody on the street who has a flat tire on the side of the road, and you roll your window
Yeah,
down and you say something nice. You're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Bless your heart. I'm so sorry you have that. I hope that you be able to get that fixed." You drive on. That's nice. You were very nice to that person. But a kind person might pull over and say, "You stupid idiot. Why did you leave the house? And you drove that way. You got a nail in your tire. Where'd you go?" But in the meantime, you're jacking the car up and putting
fixing the tech.
you're
Yeah,
helping them change. That's kindness, but maybe not nice. So I don't think there is a dichotomy between the two. And I don't think you have to choose necessarily. But I think
right.
most of us as leaders need to err on the side of being kind. I'll give you an example from my own personal, like I'm trying to stretch my kindness muscle because I too much want to be liked by people. So I'm interviewing for a new position in my company right now. And I was talking to a candidate on the phone yesterday who, in the interview process, part of what they had to do is they had to send in a video. And something that this candidate did in the video was just to say not appropriate makes it sound worse than it is, but it wasn't appropriate for what should have happened in an interview process, but not enough for me not to pursue the person because otherwise, like, this is a great candidate. Well, on the
Right.
phone, it would have been nice just to ignore that, like to not to say it. But I actually decided, you know what, I'm going to say something. So I said, so I asked her, I said, "Why did you do?" And then I told her what it was, and she, of course, knew what it was. It wasn't like it was a secret. And she explained herself, not defensively. She explained herself. She didn't even feel offended by what I said. And we carried on with the rest of the conversation. You know what she did? She texted me afterwards. Now, of course, she's trying to get a job, so we could put that in the context. But she texted me afterwards, like personally, said, "You know what? Actually, it was the next morning. She said, I've thought about what you said, and you're exactly right. I am selling myself short on this particular thing. And that type of feedback is very helpful. So whether I end up working for you or not, that really is going to help me moving forward." So that was me being kind and
Mhm.
choosing not to just be nice by ignoring the fact that there was something that happened that was slightly inappropriate. And I say inappropriate, it sounds like she had something that she shouldn't have shown. It was just she did something in an interview you probably shouldn't have done, but not bad. It just wasn't done. So
Right.
anyhow, that's an example of my own life. I'm trying to stretch my kindness muscle because I've all my life wanted to be liked, not to the point where I'm a people pleaser, but I just want to make sure I represent well and that people like me. But
Right.
sometimes in pursuit of that, I don't do the kind thing.
Well, and there are times too when someone's asking for feedback and you really have some feedback you want to give them, but you're afraid
Yeah.
that they're not going to like you if you give it. There's that challenge. I had a coworker one time who I'd encouraged to make known the things that they were doing because most of the organization didn't realize just what value they were bringing. And they ended up actually finding another job and leaving, and that's when the company that they were working for realized, oh wait, who did we just lose, right? And in a conversation with that person, they asked, and there was a history of them minimizing themselves, too, and not speaking up and saying, "Here's what I've done and here's what I've brought." Maybe I'm not that good, those types of things. And I'm like, don't say that. You are good enough. You were hired to do this. If you feel like you're not doing a good enough job, then learn how to do it better. But everyone else is feeling like you're doing a pretty good job, but only those who are seeing it. So you need to make it more visible. You need to report up and let them know, here's what I'm managing, here's what's going on, just so you have an idea.
Advocate for yourself.
Yeah, advocate for themselves. And so as they were leaving, they said, that's probably my fault. And I said, I did. I was on that fence between nice and kind. Is I could have said, no, it wasn't your fault. They should have known what you were doing. But what I said was, it would have been great if they had realized what you're doing, but they've all got their own things that they've got going on. And you're going to have to advocate for yourself and put yourself out there. So, it's not going to change where you are now, but in the new company that you're going to, take this advice. And I'm not saying toot your own horn. I'm just saying, you don't need to be out there like, look how great I am. Look at my cape. Right. But also, you do need to report and you do need to give that information to folks. This is what I'm doing. By the way, my role has expanded because I saw this need. And so I'm serving that need now. And so now I'd like to talk about maybe what my job description is now because I've actually expanded a little bit or maybe a lot. But you've got to have those conversations. Your boss may say, no, we're not going to do that. And I want you to stop doing that. But I see that there's a need for it. I'm going to hire somebody else to do it. Or why don't you take that and I'll backfill, whatever. It's their responsibility. But yeah, the needing to be able to tell them, yes, I think this may have gone differently if you had been more proactive in vocalizing what it was that you were contributing, rather than just hoping that they would figure it out.
Yeah, that extremely well said, Jim Bob. And I have to say that as far as being kind and being nice, we're not just talking about leaders to their people. We're talking about being kind to themselves. I'm kind of going back full circle to our original point about leaders, what drives leaders to always be so busy they can't carve out a work-life balance. Being kind to themselves also means being honest. And back to what you were talking about, Jason, about trust. They need to trust themselves, don't they?
Yeah. If you can't trust yourself, I mean, if you are not experiencing success in any aspect of life, it comes down to one of two reasons: lack of discipline or lack of trust. That's
Right.
it. Everything in life, you could just nail it down. It's either one of those two things or both. And the trust side is either trusting others or trusting yourself. So you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, I think that most leaders want to get to a place where they can feel like what they have done is enough, that they've left a legacy, or that they have something that is running on their own, that they don't have to always be the one doing everything, unless that's just what their absolute love is, to always be in the thick of things. But I don't think most people that I've spoken with really feel like that. I think that they want to get to a place where they can pull back a little bit, but that'll take trust in yourself and being kind to yourself.
Yep.
So, I'm hoping that this discussion has helped to open some people's eyes about some things that they can do. Hopefully that they will to reach out. Where can they get your book, Jason?
So for your listeners that want to get a free copy, I'll be happy to send a free copy. Just cover the ship and handling. You can go to therealjasonduncan.com/free book. That's therealjasonduncan.com/free book.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad too you guys have been able to reconnect a little bit through the podcast, but also, if anybody has any questions about your book or what you provide or anything that we do, we're going to make sure to include your contact information in the show notes and everything. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Nice Business Podcast. We hope you got some valuable information and inspiration. We're always looking for great stories that will help your business be more kind and successful. And if you know of one we should hear or someone that would be a great interview, please let us know. To contact me, click the link here to go to my website or use this QR code. I wish you a nice business.